Disney's 2022 animated feature Strange World flopped in the theaters and is apparently doing quite well now that it's available for streaming on Disney+. I was excited for the movie based on the early trailers and the apparent aesthetic inspiration from early 20th century adventure serials, but even I didn't bother to make the trek to the theater when it was actually released. And now that I've seen the movie, I'm glad I didn't pay to see it. And its success on Disney Plus raises an interesting question about the perception of a movie's quality in relation to studios' decisions of whether a particular movie deserves to be released in a theater versus being released direct to streaming. What is a theater quality movie and what is a streaming quality movie? Of course, the basis of that question isn't the actual quality of a film's visuals and storytelling, but rather its financial viability. And if brand new original properties like Strange World continue to underperform at the box office, then Disney will only become more likely to send big properties and only big properties to the theaters. But that's most of the big picture stuff I wanted to address with this one. Everything else here is going to be focused on the movie itself as a movie and its odd combination of creativity and a general lack thereof. This is a weird one. Strange World isn't actually bad in several ways. It's actually one of the most contemporary Disney animated films, in my opinion. Much of the studio's output often feels outdated or just bland to me, but Strange World is definitely trying, and I do respect that quite a bit. First up, this is original work. It's not a remake or a reboot of an older property, and that on its own is a major step for the studio, which for quite a while now has seemed to be almost exclusively interested in nostalgia baiting and rewriting its own history to have it align more closely with modern sensibilities. Also, I think the way this movie handles ethnic diversity is actually kind of excellent. The script doesn't make a big deal of this diversity component. It just features a diverse cast, and the personalities of specific characters are not tied exclusively to their ethnic identities. Although the way the movie handles its gay characters feels significantly clumsier, and the movie's central twist and its environments are generally fantastic. I don't find this high horsepower art direction especially electrifying anymore, especially after Puss in Boots, which goes back to my repeated comments on Disney and Pixar's seeming hesitance to integrate 2D art in the way that other major studios have been doing it for a while now, despite arguably pioneering this approach with their Paperman short back in 2012. Still, this is a pretty movie with many lovely things to look at. And even the premise of the story here is fairly contemporary as well. This movie falls under the Solarpunk subgenre, and if you're unfamiliar, Solarpunk is basically a category of storytelling and aesthetics defined by a hopeful view of the future that involves harmony with nature and an emphasis on healthy community dynamics. In fact, Strange World references tabletop Solarpunk games, which are definitely a thing in the real world. And the movie's twist, which I will not spoil, is very much in line with Solarpunk concepts and ideals. It almost summarizes them in a way. And yeah, the roots of Solarpunk can be traced back quite a ways, but it's definitely congealed and gained more traction in recent years. Now, assuming the team sat down and tried to think of interesting sci-fi stories to try out, I would not be surprised if someone just happened to mention like the very existence of Solarpunk, and from there, it probably felt like a really safe bet. It's fresh, but it's not underground, and it's different, but not in a way that would upset the studio's corporate leadership. So there were some successful choices made in all these different areas, but unfortunately, the complete finished product is brought down in a big way by the script. The screenwriter here is Ki Nguyen. Is it Ki? I apologize. Who I believe is a playwright in addition to being a screenwriter, and he also wrote Raya and the Last Dragon, a movie that I continue to forget until it's actively mentioned. And he's also written a bunch of other stuff. He's written for Sci-Fi and PBS before. I have no idea what kinds of pressures he was dealing with when hashing out this script. Probably quite a few. You can't just write a script for a major Disney movie without getting notes and comments constantly from all kinds of different stakeholders. But my God, I almost can't believe just how dull and predictable this script is, specifically regarding its characters. I don't even know whether it's possible to write a family movie that feels more family movie than this family movie does. In the prologue, we start out with a father and son who don't see eye to eye. The father wants his son to follow in his footsteps, but the son doesn't want to. Then we move on to the main story, in which there's a father and son who don't see eye to eye. The father wants his son to follow in his footsteps, but the son doesn't want to. TVTropes.org, which is a lovely resource, calls this trope like father, unlike son, and users have cataloged just a few examples of this trope in action across games, manga, novels, shows, and movies. And believe me when I say that this is just a small sampling. Now, if you know me, then you know that I hate over-reliance on overused tropes and storytelling standards. I like newness. I like originality. And while no work can ever be 100% new and original, at the very least, I like to see that some effort was made to do something different. I'm going to take a generous stance here and say that I would have been fine with the use of this trope if the characters were incredibly interesting, unique, and well realized. They are not. These characters, man, during dialogue scenes, I either found myself predicting what they would say next or just letting my attention wander beyond the frame of the TV. I know that I have somewhat unique standards for storytelling, but I really don't think that my desire for compelling characters is outlandish in any way. In fact, you might say that compelling characters are essential to effective storytelling, regardless of the genre or medium. Our central characters, a father, son, and grandfather, never feel like more than their archetypes. These are stock characters who just happen to have a few traits that are specific to this wacky sci-fi setting. I cannot overemphasize just how bland I found these characters to be, because this is the single element that made the movie feel boring and uninteresting. As I've already talked about, there was so much to like here, and in isolation, I appreciate those elements a great deal, and I appreciate the teams who brought those elements to life, but it feels like the characters actually drain interest away from the movie. The characters are fun vampires. And I don't mean like fun vampires, that would be great. They feed on fun, they consume fun, and leave the movie lacking. And that failing falls on the screenwriter, unless the producers were handing down some truly draconian notes and edits that actively made these characters worse. And if you're wondering what the side characters are like, by the way, just take the main cast and subtract 10 points from charisma. Just even more hollow, even more simplistic. And in terms of lesser evils, that supposed inspiration from old-timey adventure serials they packed into the trailers and the posters was misleading at best. The opening of the movie is modeled after an old newsreel, very similar to the opening of Up, by the way, but that was the only element that seemed to be influenced in any way by the old serials. Well, I guess they also used film wipes as transitions, but in fact they're very similar to the wipes used in like A New Hope, which in turn were referencing the old serials as well. But that's it. So much more could have been done to amplify that influence, but so much was not done. I guess it just wouldn't have fit with the movie's dedication to contemporary animated movie norms, such as clean visuals and hyper-saturated color palettes. It's a sad situation. It's not a disaster, just a shame. And it certainly doesn't do anything to convince me that WDAS is capable of delivering something truly fresh. And that's all I have to say on it, really. Just a short video, wanted to share my thoughts. Of course, please feel free to share yours. Until next time, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping by.